Hello and welcome to our extended disc webinar. Our 15-minute webinar today is on capitalizing on your leadership strengths. My name is Christina Bowser and I'm the training director here at Extended Disc, and joining me is my colleague Markku Kauppanen, president of Extended Disc.
Hi, Christina, and hello, everybody.
Hello. We're going to get right into it. This is being recorded, as always. You can find it on our YouTube or on our website in the coming days. As always, 15 minutes is a blur, so we won't be taking your questions live. Put them in the question section, and we'll follow up with you after the session today. So Markku and I were laughing, we could talk about leadership all day long, but the challenge today is to get it to focus down on just looking at how to capitalize on your leadership strengths.
Yeah, and it's always a very popular topic. Whenever we talk about leadership, we know we're going to have a full house, so to speak, because leadership applications for not only for Extended Disc, but in training and development industry have been so popular for, well, many years now, because organizations need effective leaders. There's a succession planning, high potential leaders. How do we deal with different generations? So many different topics. So let's focus on strengths only today.
Right. And, as I was putting together this PowerPoint, I was talking to Markku. It's like, we go back, you guys, if you listen in on any of our webinars, we talk about the 4 steps to effective communication all the time. And this is the 4 steps that you see in front of you, except it's from the aspects of leadership.
Well, with the 4 steps, what we try to do is to make sure that when people are using Extended Disc assessments in different applications, that we always kind of step back and remember what the big picture is. Assessing people, that's fine, of course, but creating a self-awareness is only the starting point. So the assessments themselves really are the starting point for development. And even in the context of leadership, we really want to focus ultimately, how do we modify behaviors? And using the same 4-step approach, whether it's leadership or something else, really that's a couple of things. One is that when people are going through different Extended Disc training programs, they quickly get the reinforcement that the process is always the same. By keeping it simple and practical, really ultimately accomplish the most important goal. It makes it effective.
So just quickly through it, obviously identifying your leadership style based on the DISC framework, understanding how you show up, how you prefer to lead. Of course, step 3, I think, is one of the differences between many assessments is how can you identify the styles of your employees so that you can get to the application piece, which is how do you make decisions to adjust your leadership style?
Absolutely, and of course, a lot of our clients in that 3rd step, when they identify the style of the employees actually go through the process too. So the manager, the leader, has specific information about the employee. And then, of course, you can use tools like the team assessment or the pair assessments to really make sure that the information the assessments provide is very specific. So the leader does not have to think about, am I confident in my identification of my employee style? And more importantly, what are the specific things I should be doing differently in modifying my leadership behavior? All that would be spelled out as long as the employees have completed the questionnaire.
Right, and Markku mentioned the different tools. I just wanted to take a step back and talk about the tools that most of us will go through ourselves. So many of us just use the standard individual assessment. It's great. I always say if you're using it for a team where you have leaders and team members, this is your go-to assessment. We also have the manager's assessment and the leadership assessment. And oftentimes people ask us, well, what's the difference?
Well, the difference really is that manager assessment is a little bit more tactical day-to-day behaviors, while leadership is more focused on not only the day-to-day, how do I lead my employees, but more of a strategic view of the leadership process. So big picture versus kind of a day-to-day tactical versus strategic. I think that kind of the best way to identify the differences. Now, of course, with all of the assessments, they can be then tailored to clients' preferences and amount of content, what it focuses on, but at big picture, that's what's happening.
Yeah, and I always say, pick the one that when the person looks at the report, they're going to say, hey, this is talking about me.
Exactly.
So let's just, we could spend forever on just talking about leadership styles, but let's just give a brief overview and then get right into talking about how do we utilize our strengths.
Yeah, very quickly. And now let's focus on the leadership strengths of the different styles. I think that with these styles, it is that they are not afraid to make quick decisions. They move fast. They are risk takers, and they're not really afraid to communicate their vision to employees. And in fact, sometimes they really have to be careful that they are not too blunt about their communication styles. I styles, of course, are fantastic in getting people really emotionally, enthusiastically involved, so they can communicate their vision very effectively and building that excitement and that energy to move forward. S styles, very effective leaders. And by the way, I want to make sure that we understand that no matter what the style is, you can be effective leader. And we find examples of effective leaders in all of these different behavioral styles. And of course, all of us have all of these styles in us. And I think sometimes people mistakenly think that in order to be an effective leader, and by the way, it's cultural. In the United States, often that you need to be the D style. Well, there are effective D style leaders, but you do not have to be a D style to be an effective leader. No matter what your style is, you can be very effective. So their styles, they're very persistent. Once they understand what they want to do, they plan it, they communicate it effectively, and they are very persistent, steady leaders. C styles, of course, are the masters of information. They can handle lots of information and really kind of condense it to a level that people can understand it.
Right. So, and what Markku mentioned that, these give you just kind of overviews of how these styles tend to show up, but it cannot measure your ability to succeed. It cannot measure your experience or your knowledge or your attitude.
And obviously, these are very, very quick overview.
Absolutely.
We can spend, like you said, a day on this easily.
Absolutely. So let's zero in about what this webinar is about, which is how to utilize your leadership strengths. And we just pulled some sections from the leadership report. We all have our favorite sections. Markku has his, I have mine, but we just picked a couple to highlight.
Well, from a really kind of easy technical standpoint, like here we're looking at how to lead your employees. And what I like about this section, and there are a couple others that I like, since we mentioned what I like the section of how you motivate your employees and how you develop your employees, and also how you help your employees to achieve their goals. And all of them use this format where we have these bar graphs, and when that rectangular box is to the right side, those are your strengths. So those are the kind of leadership behaviors that really flow easily. You don't have to concentrate. You don't have to spend a lot of mental calories making that happen. Really what you need to do mainly is, one is you don't take them for granted and don't overlook them. And of course, the flip side of that is that you want to make sure you don't overuse them because they are so comfortable for us. When something is very comfortable, we tend to overuse it, and especially under pressure, it can actually become a weakness because we're overdoing it.
Right, and as Markku mentioned, he kind of gave off quite a list of sections that he likes in the report. What I always want to remind you, especially when you're working with your clients, identifying their strengths and how to use them, is these lists are not something that every competence must be addressed. They're really almost like a kind of a sounding board where you pick the ones that if you were to focus on them at this point in time, you would get the most bang for your buck. It would, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even.
Well, it's really most effective at this time, and the words that you used are very important. At this time, again, I've been doing this close to 25 years now. I look at my report just about weekly, because what happens is that our environment changes, our perceptions of the environment change, the people around us change.
Exactly.
So you need to always look at the context in which you apply this information. And it's amazing to me that after all these years, and I think I have a pretty good disc knowledge, it's that I still learn something new. Sometimes I need to make sure I don't forget doing this with so and so.
And as we get older, we forget more.
Yeah, because
we refer more.
Yes, it's autopilot so easily when it comes to behaviors.
Autopilot is a great way to say it.
And but this will provide information that is applicable, and I really encourage people to revisit and look at it and see how have things changed. How has my own personal view of leadership changed, and what does this important mean to me right now?
Right. So these graphs are all interpreted the same way. They have just different categories that they focus on from your leadership style. So again, the approach is the same. You prioritize which ones have the most impact on you right now. Make sure that it's a dynamic list. You can always go back and review it.
And one of the things about these scales we have from -5 to +5, we're not talking about skill level, like a hard skill. We're talking about energy. So when you see the pluses, that tends to create energy almost for you. If you have +5, that means that that behavior is so comfortable that it energizes you. The minus scores, and higher the minus score is, more energy it will require.
Right, and sometimes energy that you just have to say, hey, Christina, be more task focused at this moment. So it's not about ability, it's just, as Markku mentioned, it's just about, conscious thought and energy.
Yeah, and if somebody, let's say they have a low score like -4 or -5, okay, it's going to require some energy, but once you begin to develop that, you can actually become kind of a ninja in that behavior because you work on it so hard.
Exactly. So the strength section, when you always hear us joke, people are going to be nodding their head as they're reading their strengths, because who doesn't like to read the positives of you, right?
This is my favorite section. So yeah, and here again, we just want to make sure we don't overlook those strengths. We are utilizing them, and again, being careful not to overuse them to a point where they become that significant weakness.
Exactly. And then just the last section I wanted Markku to highlight for us is, we call this the reminders and suggestions section. And there's different sections, but this one specifically is focused on how to improve your success as a manager. And why do you think it's, what value do you see in these particular tips?
Well, I think the most important part about this section is that it's very specific. So when people begin to understand the DISC model and they think about their own natural leadership style, how they lead, motivate, influence, communicate, etc., they of course get that confidence in who they are, and they begin to really reflect more on understanding that I'm not perfect. I have things that I need to continuously work to develop. And once you have that confidence in who you are as a leader, your followers, for the lack of a better word, will see that, because I think genuine leaders are very comfortable in their own skin. And people can see that, hey, this person is a genuine human being, an effective leader. But sometimes when we really want to be more effective at with different employees and in very specific areas, this section provides that information in a very clear and specific format.
Right, and remember, just like the majority of the report, these reminders and suggestions are based on your natural style. They're very specific to you. So even if let's say you're an S style and you're sitting next to someone else who's an S style, you may not have the same tips and suggestions as that person if their profile too is different from yours.
Absolutely, they're going to be very unique to each individual. I mean, of course, if two individuals are very, very similar, they're going to see more overlap, but they're specific to each individual. And again, the idea here is that let's provide actionable information, and most importantly, I would say, something that the person was not aware of before. Because if a person already knew it, then the value is not as limited. Then it's a nice reminder, but hopefully we can provide information that the person can have to stop and say, I'm not sure. Is that really who I am? Is that how others could see me? Because it's important to remember that how we perceive ourselves and what our self-image is can be quite different how others see us. And especially in leadership role, the dynamic, I should say the personal dynamic between the individuals creates different kind of context in which people perceive each other and what this information even actually means.
Right. So I always tell people, when you're looking at these are behaviors that typically are outside your natural comfort zone, things that you don't comfortably think to do. But a good suggestion or a tip for when you're working with your own clients is have them think of maybe a specific person that they would like to improve their interaction with, whether it's an employee or a colleague, and then look through these and see what, if they were to choose any of these specific adjustments, could improve their interaction.
Great point. And also maybe think about, because leadership and all jobs are kind of pressure filled, but leadership jobs are pressure filled, and that pressure creates tension and stress sometimes. And when we feel those emotions, you and I have talked about this a lot, strong emotions are really the enemy of behavioral modification. So when we are under pressure, which leaders typically are, they need to be extra cautious and extra conscious about what does this information mean to me and how I can use it to become more effective.
Exactly. Well, as always, 15 minutes just flies by. If you would like to take a look at our leadership report or our manager report or any of our reports, please reach out to us. You can reach out to us at info@extendeddisc.org. Also, you can look at our other leadership webinars and blogs on our website at www.extendeddisc.org. We also have upcoming webinars. You can check the events tab for those. We do have another webinar coming up. It's called Adjusting Our Style to Improve Interactions. It's essentially a 1-hour webinar focused on step 4 of the 4-step process.
It's going to be a good one.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.